Some lies are too gentle to hurt. They slip between words, dressed as compliments, and settle in the spaces men want to believe most. I've spent years in this job, and I've seen it over and over. Men walk in for an experience and leave with a fantasy stitched together by 7 little sentences. Not because we're cruel, but because silence is awkward and truth is expensive. Today, I'll share the 7 most common lies escorts tell, not to shame anyone, but to show you how easy it is to believe what feels good. Comment love if you're ready to listen without judgment. And don't forget to like and subscribe. 1. I really like you. The first time I told that lie, it surprised even me. He was in his late 40s, sharply dressed, and spoke with the calm certainty of someone used to being in charge. He had booked an hour, but from the moment he walked in, I knew he wanted more than time. He wanted proof that he mattered, that someone, somewhere, still found him interesting. We talked for 10 minutes before I leaned in and said it softly, like a confession. I really like you. His face changed instantly. He smiled without caution, settled back into his seat like he belonged there. That one sentence melted the awkwardness, made the room feel smaller, warmer. But it wasn't real. It wasn't that I disliked him. It wasn't even manipulation. It was habit. Most men don't want a transaction. They want a story. And in that story, I'm not someone who's paid to be present. I'm the woman who chose him. That's the difference between an experience and a memory, between release and connection. Men believe this lie not because they're gullible, but because they need it. They want to believe that desire still follows them, that age hasn't faded their charm. And maybe they deserve that moment. Maybe we both do. But the truth is, I didn't know him. I liked how he treated me. I liked his cologne. I liked the quiet. But did I really like him? Probably not. Still, he left with a lighter heart than he came in with. And sometimes that's the only real thing in the room. 2. I just started here. He was nervous. You could tell by the way he fiddled with the glass, by how carefully he avoided eye contact until he had to speak. When he finally asked, "How long have you been doing this?" I paused, just long enough to make it sound like the truth, and said, "Not long. I just started here." He smiled with quiet relief. That answer made everything easier for him. It erased the images he didn't want, of men before him, of a routine I've perfected, of a woman who's done this 100 times before. By making myself seem new, I made him feel new too. This lie is a gentle one. It's not cruel. It doesn't manipulate as much as it reassures. Men want to believe they're the first, or at least among the first, that the connection is still fresh, that I'm not numb to the touch, not yet detached by repetition. They want the illusion of spontaneity, of authenticity. And the truth? I've been doing this for years. I know what works. I know how to guide a conversation, how to read a room, how to sense what a man needs to hear before he even knows it himself. But I also know this. Telling him I was new didn't hurt him. It helped him relax. It allowed him to be gentle instead of performative. He spoke slower after that. He listened. He even asked if I was comfortable. For a moment, he stepped out of the role of buyer and became someone trying to be kind. That's what the lie did. Not magic, not manipulation. Just a pause in the power dynamics long enough for 2 people to pretend they were equals. 3. You're my first today. He checked the time before saying hello. That's how I knew what was coming. He was the kind of man who needed to know where he stood, even in a place where nothing truly stands still. After a bit of small talk, he asked casually, "Busy day?" I smiled, kept my voice soft, and said what he wanted to hear. "You're my first today." His shoulders eased. That one line made him feel cleaner, closer, maybe even special. There's something about being first that soothes the male ego. It says, no one came before you, no one touched me today, no one left traces. For a brief moment, he could believe that I was fresh physically, emotionally, just for him. But of course, he wasn't. He was the third, maybe the fourth. And maybe I was tired. Maybe I wanted to go home. But none of that belonged in the room once I said those 5 words. You're My First today is less a statement of fact and more an emotional offering. It gives a man the feeling that he's stepping into something untouched, even if it's all an illusion. Men believe this lie because they need to separate themselves from the others. They want the experience, but not the reminder that it's shared, that others came before, that others will come after. It's not about morality, it's about meaning. And sometimes when I said it, I wished it were true. I wished I had saved all my softness for that one man, in that 1 hour. But work doesn't wait for honesty. So I gave him the sentence he needed, and he gave me silence in return. The kind that only comes when someone believes he's special. 4. You're amazing in bed. He walked in like he had something to prove. Mid-50s, athletic build, confident handshake. The kind of man who read too many articles about pleasing women and thought technique could replace connection. From the first kiss, I knew how the night would unfold. Quick, structured, full of questions like, "Do you like that?" And "Am I the best you've had?" Afterward, as he lay beside me, clearly waiting for validation, I smiled and said what he was aching to hear. "You were amazing." His entire body softened, not just from release, but from relief. Because in that moment, I had confirmed what he needed most, that he still had it, that he could still make a woman feel something real. It didn't matter that I had to bite my tongue through most of it, or that I had already rehearsed this line more times than I could count. What mattered was how much it meant to him. Men believe this lie because their self-worth is often tied to their performance. They fear irrelevance. They fear being forgettable. And when someone tells them they're still desired, still powerful, they cling to it like proof, even if that proof comes from someone paid to say it. But I don't tell this lie out of cruelty. I tell it because silence is crueler. Because sometimes letting a man feel proud is better than letting him feel nothing. And in the stillness after, when the lights are low and the words hang heavy, I remind myself that kindness can be quiet, even if it's not always true. 5. I came with you. He asked me gently, as if afraid of the answer. Did you finish too? I nodded, smiled, and touched his arm like it was the most natural thing in the world. Yes, I said softly. I did. He looked proud, relieved even, as if he had passed a test he didn't study for. That one sentence wrapped the entire experience in a bow. It made him feel connected, not just satisfied. It told him he had given something, not just taken. And that mattered more than anything. The truth? I didn't. I rarely do. Because pleasure, for me, isn't part of the equation. Not in the way he imagines it. Not in the way he hopes it reflects him. But I understand the desire behind his question. It's not about sex. It's about significance. He wants to believe he reached me. That in the middle of a paid moment, something real broke through. Men believe this lie because they want to feel capable. Not just physically, but emotionally. They want to know that they didn't just use someone. They want to know they moved someone. And climax for a woman is the ultimate proof. Or so they think. I've learned how to say it with my eyes, my breath, the curve of my back. It's choreography. It's kindness. Sometimes it feels dishonest. Other times it feels merciful, because the alternative is silence. And silence, after intimacy, can feel like judgment. So I give him the lie. Not because I owe it, but because in that moment, it's the only way to send him home whole. Let him believe he was enough for someone, somewhere, even if just for an hour. 6. This could be something more. He came back 3 times in 1 month. Each time, he brought a new bottle of wine, a new story from work, a new question that wasn't really about me, but about how I saw him. By the 3rd visit, I could feel the hesitation in his voice. The way he lingered longer. The way he started sentences with, "If this were real?" That night, as he poured the wine and asked about my favorite places to travel, I let the silence stretch. Then I leaned in and said it. "I feel like we could be something more." His eyes lit up not with lust, but with longing. That sentence gave him permission to dream, to imagine that all of this, the intimacy, the laughter, the attention, could spill into a life beyond the walls of a rented room. The truth is, I didn't mean it. Not because he was unworthy, but because this wasn't a love story. It was a service. A warm, kind, temporary illusion. But men often want to believe their presence can rewrite the rules, that they were different enough to change the ending. Men believe this lie because they crave connection without boundaries. They want to be the exception, the one client who became more. And sometimes I wish I could give them that truth. But we both know where this leads. Disappointment, confusion, and a quiet kind of heartbreak. Still, I told him. Not to mislead, but to soften the fall. Because in this world, hope sells as well as anything else. And for an hour, I let him believe there might be a second chapter even if the story always ends the same. 7. I'm not here for the money. He was different, polite, quiet, almost academic in how he approached our time together. He asked me what I liked about this job, not how I got into it, but what kept me in it. I paused, then said it with a straight face and just enough softness in my voice. I'm here because I enjoy connecting with people. He smiled, satisfied. That was the answer he wanted, not the truth that I had rent due, bills stacked, and a dozen things I'd rather be doing with my time. He needed to believe I was there for something more noble than survival. Men believe this lie because it comforts them. It removes the transactional layer. It turns the encounter into something mutual, something meaningful. If I'm not doing it for money, then maybe I chose them. Maybe they earned this moment. Maybe they deserve it. Of course I care about people. Of course there are moments of connection that feel real. But money is the frame around the painting. Without it, none of this would exist. That doesn't make it empty, but it does make it clear. Still, I say it. Because it lets them feel seen not just as clients, but as men. It gives them dignity. And sometimes dignity matters more than honesty. He thanked me that night with a generous tip and said he admired my spirit. I nodded, took the envelope, and walked him to the door. I didn't lie to hurt him. I lied to protect the version of himself he wanted to believe in. The man who inspired something real, even in a space built for pretend. And sometimes that version is what keeps them coming back. Not for the body, for the story. Some lies feel like mercy. Maybe you're thinking, what's the harm in a few small lies? They don't cost much, and no one walks away bleeding. But I've seen what they leave behind. Men stepping out into the night a little taller, a little warmer, carrying words that weren't quite true but felt good enough to believe. These lies don't destroy. They soothe. They patch the cracks that life leaves behind. And maybe that's why they're so powerful. Because in the absence of love, kindness still matters, even if it's borrowed. But here's what I've learned. The men who leave most changed aren't the ones who believed every word. They're the ones who saw through the fantasy and stayed anyway, who didn't need to be lied to because they came not to be flattered but to be human. So if you've heard these words before and held on to them, don't feel ashamed. You were never stupid. You were simply searching for meaning in a place built to imitate it. If this stayed with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave the word love in the comments. Sometimes that one word says more than anything else.